company hiring that we're going to hear from in just a little bit tonight too. So if you could, please go to sgf.dev and get yourself a profile. You can upload your picture, set up all your skill sets, mark whether or not you're looking for work, all that good stuff. And one of the things that I was working on back there and just pushed up is there's a new link at the top. Might not be on the mobile map, can't remember. I'll have to check that. People have been asking, where can I get one of these sick shirts or mugs that some of us have? And the thing, is, when we first formally transitioned into Springfield Devs, we had
it is merch.
Yeah, we had the opportunity for people to become founding members of the group because we really needed to bootstrap this effort and get some money in, and so everyone that helped out with that got one of these coveted shirts and mugs. But after that, we didn't really have any plans for how do we keep that stuff going for people that want it. And so finally, we've got the ability for people to go and order Springfield Devs merch. We're using a print-on-demand service. Some of you may be familiar with that concept. It was new to me. And so Springfield Devs gets like $4 to $5 on each item that's purchased. So, if you purchase something, you're helping us out a little bit. But more importantly, you're getting some sweet gear. This stuff will probably evolve a bit and we'll have more items in there in the future, but we kind of just wanted to cast that net out there and see the response from it and see how it goes. So plenty of items on there, so check that out, set up your profile, and yeah, that's about all I got there. So we've got a badass company in town that is hiring right now. So Miranda, if you'd like to come take this cute little mic.
The cutest little mic, and it feels weird to be up here in front of a group of people. So
yes,
that's fun.
People love it.
So if I stumble with my words, just please forgive me. Haven't done this in a while. But I'm Miranda Provance. I'm the director of engineering at Mostly Serious. We're a digital agency here in town. We've got an office in Galloway, but thanks to the pandemic, we took the opportunity to transition to being a work from anywhere company. So you can choose to work at the office, you can choose to work from home, or whatever coffee shop is your favorite, which is what somebody on my team does.
Architect.
Yeah. Well, only when Coffee Epic was closed.
Oh, yes, sure.
Now he's back to Coffee Epic. But anyway, or any combination of those places that you choose. We primarily build websites, marketing sites for clients, medium to large size businesses, and are actively trying to expand our reach outside of Springfield to work on bigger, better stuff. We have, I will say, a truly wonderful culture. I've been there for 9 years myself and can't imagine working anywhere else. So looking for an experienced developer. We build sites with Craft CMS primarily. So front-end skills and PHP would went well, but if you have any experience with other back-end stuff or other CMS frameworks, that's awesome too. So you can find our job posting on our website. It's mostlyserious.io, and we just rebuilt that too, and it looks really wonderful.
It does look wonderful.
Even if you just want to check that out, take a peek. Thank you.
Yeah. Be sure to go chat to Miranda tonight.
I'm going to die on all these cords up here. Remember talking the other mic.
Oh, yes.
So you got a 2 mic it.
Yeah, no, we'll just shout. Levi, do you have, I know you guys, you can just stand and shout if you, well, maybe if online wants to hear you. Come up here. Yeah, take the
Let's see how far will it let me take this? We'll just experiment.
All right, so my name is Levi Zinning, and I represent OpenSGF. We're a tech meetup here where we meet every Monday here at the E-Factory, and we work on projects for nonprofits. But we have a bit of a unique event coming up. We're an actual Code for America brigade. They're kind of a national organization that sets up a whole bunch of chapters that do exactly what we do. And they have a kind of national event that they call their National Day of Civic Hacking. And we are hosting one of those events at our Code for America brigade. So that is going to be Saturday, September 18th. And it's going to be mostly all-day event, kind of meeting early morning, 9:45, 10-ish here at the E-Factory. And we're going to be picking up and doing a whole bunch of work on one of the projects that Hack for Good did a few years ago and trying to make some more progress on that thing and getting it a little bit closer to launch. So if you're interested in showing up and participating in, obviously, a free lunch provided by us and all that kind of stuff, and putting your tech skills to use, certainly meet us there on September 18th. Also, got some open SGF stickers that I will leave over on the table there. Feel free to take one if you'd like.
Some high quality production value by Mike on the camera here. Having entirely too much fun.
All right, I'm good. So. Take it away.
All right, so before we get started, we're working on something new. So, obviously we have a high quality production going on here with our streaming setup. But we have a lot of people that are watching us from home on the Twitch. Maybe some of you have done that as well. And it's really difficult for presenters to manage multiple vectors of chat. So you've got like people asking questions in Discord, people asking questions on Twitch, people asking questions in person, and it's very overwhelming. And then today we have a kind of a panel style discussion, and so we're going to be taking questions in a centralized way on Slido. So if you're already watching this from Twitch, then you see the Slido information on the screen. For those of you here, you can go to slido.com and put in our code here, and you can see how everyone has already been asking questions. We started asking for questions early in the Discord starting last week. You can see those questions. You can upvote the question if you maybe also have that question. You want to make sure it gets answered and get it to the top, but maybe your question's not already in here. And so please feel free to add it for the panel, and we'll get to those as we go. So that prevents the problem that we've been having of questions coming at us from all angles. And so if you want to scan that QR code or grab that number and make sure that you have that information in case you want to ask a question as we go along here, because I'm going to take this screen away and then you won't see it anymore. So I'll give you just a minute to get that info. And yeah, I appreciate all the questions beforehand. I know our panel liked to have some pre-reading of kind of what to prepare, because when you plan one of these, you're not quite sure what people want to know about. We can stand up here and talk about stuff, but is that interesting? I don't know. So. I feel like we're probably ready to get started. So we'll probably just start with some introductions. And I want to make sure that we haven't lost Charlie. Are you still there, Charlie?
Yeah.
We don't see you though, so are you wanting to turn the camera on?
Yeah.
There's Charlie! He's so
Hey,
close to
everybody.
the screen.
That's true.
So, do you want to kick us off with an introduction so everyone knows who you are?
Sure. My name is Charlie Rosenbury. I live in Springfield, Missouri. I have a business called Self Interactive. I guess we'll do the long. We're not doing the long spiel now, or am I doing the long spiel now?
No, I'd say go ahead and talk about whatever you want to talk about. Talk about why you have
what?
this mark on your forehead.
I don't know if you guys have been watching the news lately, but I got something to tell you about it. No, I got this mark on my forehead from playing VR and tightening it too much. So, in case you're wondering. No, so I got into software development when I was young. I was kind of self-taught, and then out of college, got a job at a company. I was their first hire, and it was a local digital development agency. Not unlike Mostly Serious, also unlike Mostly Serious, and I just worked there for a long time, kind of built up a team there and gained a lot of experience. And then before my oldest daughter was born, I decided it'd be a good time to quit my job. So I quit my job and went into freelancing. Ended up going back to that company for a few years, and then quit again and went back to freelancing. Decided I wanted to build my own little agency and hired a bunch of people. Then learned that was not actually what was good for me and my life. and went back to freelancing. And so now I'm kind of somewhere in the middle where I do freelance work, but I also like, depending on the scale of the project and this or that, I'll like kind of bring in other freelancers to do some of it. And that is why I'm here. So I'm here as the freelancer who does not use Upwork. And yeah, that's me. I think that's a good intro.
Awesome. I'm gonna give this to Zach. You can go next.
Hello, my name is Zack Turner. I live here in Springfield. I have been doing freelance for the better part of 8 years now. I got my first start in freelancing through a company called Lionbridge, who is a company that's contracted out by Google to help them refine their search engines for both Google and...
I'm sorry, the microphone's not catching.
Yeah, so for the room, this is my problem Mike had. Maybe just stand up and teacher voice. Teacher This, is this on, or is you gotta turn it on? So this one actually should come out in here. Okay. So yeah, but this is what the stream is gonna hear.
So you want me to use one?
Yeah.
It's like a press
Pick up
conference.
an echo, but I think that's the better way for people to hear. Yeah.
So do you want me to start over?
Yeah. What? Go ahead. Let's start over.
Okay.
Real professional.
Okay, there we go. Yeah. Hi, my name is Zack Turner. I live here in Springfield. I've been freelancing for 8 years now. I got my first taste of freelancing working for a company called Lionbridge. They're contracted out by Google. They basically do software, or they do the search engine refinement for both Google and YouTube to help both refine the results and also catch things like data voids, stuff like that. I did that for a while, and eventually quit doing that because it sucked. But I moved into doing work through Upwork, which I am an electrical engineer and do PCB design, circuit design, prototype development, programming. In addition to that, both desktop applications as well as writing firmware for microcontrollers and hardware. And I enjoyed it a lot more, and it's been great. It's been a great way to find work and keep things going, even especially now, since being out and traveling and stuff is bad. Yeah, so I was basically
Okay. So yeah, I think Mike echo is inevitable for those playing at home, because they're like, they can hear this twice because it's coming through the speakers, and then this mic's kind of sensitive. So, but you know, that's just what we'll have to do. We'll just make it work. Everyone at home, just deal with it. So my name is Tiffany Ford. Most of you know me as the department chair for computer information science at OTC, but I have been freelancing on the side for quite some time, simply because teaching doesn't pay very well. But most of that is because it is very difficult to keep your skills sharp when you're consistently teaching at the same level for several years. So entry-level software development doesn't change. Entry-level web development doesn't really change. And so when you've been doing this is my 15th year at the college, and you want to learn new things, and you like tech, and you are just generally interested in stuff, then taking on projects where you're getting paid to learn stuff is probably the best way to go about it, if you're confident enough that you can actually pull it off, which is maybe part of what we're going to talk about today, is confidence. But I also work with Upwork as a success partner. And so success partners basically are kind of like ambassadors. We get a lot of information from Upwork on how to help people get started, data on what is working and what's not working, things about marketability, rates, what jobs and skills are most in demand, just a lot of stuff to really help us kind of drive people in the right direction. So I've been helping that people kind of get started on the Upwork platform for about 3 years now in that capacity. And while, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about platforms like that versus not platforms like that, there are some pros and cons to going with a platform like Upwork. And so I was going to show you some things on Upwork, but the screen share is really wonky, and I don't want to troubleshoot it while you all watch me. That's not fun. Well, maybe it's fun for you. It's not fun for me. And so I think maybe the easiest thing is to just jump into some of these questions, and there are a lot of questions which we really appreciate. So we'll probably just start right here at the top with some of these, and then you're welcome to continue asking questions as we go if something comes up, and that way we can make sure we get to it. But I think the top question right now is, how do you determine what kind of rate that you charge without knowing whether it's too much or too little? So does anyone want to volunteer to take this question? I can call on people like I'm totally the teacher. Charlie turned his camera off so we can't see him, and he's like over here like.
Sorry, no, my dinner just got here, and so I'm trying not to chew in
watched us
front of
eat.
everybody.
It's only fair that we get to watch you eat.
Yeah. I'll take this one. I'll take this question.
Okay, go for it.
So I think, I think the answer to all these questions is it depends on a number of parts of where you're at. I know for me, I kind of learned, so I very much believe in value-based pricing, which means, if you're building some software that's going to make a company $100,000 a year, you should charge a lot more than if you were making something that's going to not make them that much money. And I don't mean that you charge $100,000. I mean, like, keep in mind that you approach this from the viewpoint of the business. Like, why do they want this, and what is the ROI that they're getting from it, and then kind of work from there. Now, if the thing you're making for them is going to take you 3 years to make, it's probably going to take a lot more time than when you finally divide that out, you're going to be making $5 an hour or whatever. So, I mean, you got to consider that as well. But to sum that up, I would say you start with, like, what's the market rate for this, and what is the value to the client, and then make sure it fits there. I think for me, I started out at a rate based on what I knew the place I worked before charged for things. And I was charging knowing that I would be able to do what I said I was going to do. And so, I think for me, I don't think of it as an hourly rate as much as like a project rate. So as much as I can, I try to say, I'll start with, like, I think it'll take me this long, and I know that I need to make at least this much, so I'm going to quote it here. A lot of that comes, again, from experience of, like, knowing what other people are charging for this thing and what kind of the market going rate is. Yeah, I mean, I think especially if you're starting on Upwork, where this is going to bleed into other questions, but, like, I think when you're starting web development, it's going to depend on how much experience you have. So, like, if you're pretty new to this and you've, like, done maybe you don't have a lot of real world experience building paying projects for clients, Upwork is a really good way to get that experience in terms of, like, knowing what you're comfortable with and learning more about a framework in the real world or something.
Oh no! We crashed it! Discord literally just, like, crapped on itself.
Oh, there she is. Okay. You first got to have experience, and that's going to inform that. You should make sure you're not working for less than you need to survive. And then as you get that experience, you can raise your rate because you're better at it and you know what people are willing to pay for it. And then hopefully you eventually get enough clients that it doesn't matter if you charge too much because you have enough other work that if you don't get the project because you're too expensive, then good for you, because you should, you can just kind of, like, keep ratcheting up your rate as you find people who will pay it. That's my long rambling answer to that question.
No, I think you touched on something good in there about Upwork is a good place to get that kind of knowledge. But the other downside, and I'll highlight downsides. I don't necessarily. They're telling me that they can't see us anymore. Hold on. I think I think something crashed. Let's see if I can get it back up. Hopefully they can see us now. There, they can see us. So the problem with platforms like Upwork is that they're global, and there is never going to be a shortage.
Here's but I'm
It's like all frozen. Oh, this is gonna suck. This is gonna be fun. Yeah, of people that will work for much cheaper than you want to work for. And that's just the way a global economy works. Cost of living being much lower in some other countries means that they're totally willing to do stuff for $5 an hour or less. And so there is a big problem on sites like Upwork where you really have to have kind of a strong portfolio, maybe not necessarily experience, but you have to be able to show some skills in order to signal some quality. Because there are clients out there that will pay, good money for good developers, but you have to actually show them that you're one of them. And so that's where like sites like Upwork get real murky, because you feel like this died. We did not make the proper sacrifice. What did we do? But yeah, sites like Upwork that it's just the Wild West. You can just charge whatever you want. Did it come back? Stop. I could just yell really loud. But do you have anything to say about rates?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll give this to you.
Okay,
You can tell he's the hardware guy because he took it and just like pushed a button and he just handed it back. So.
I didn't touch it. I just look at it.
These are the kinds of skills I'm talking about here.
I do agree with everything you said. One good thing about Upwork, and a question that you got brought up, is when you're starting out, how do you know how much to ask for what you want to do? I mean, you can kind of search around online a little bit. Something might be harder to find because that information just isn't as openly available on just doing a Google search about it. So one nice thing that Upwork does do is that they have metrics on all of this. So if you go and you enter in a field of the work you'd like to do, like, hey, I want to do full stack, I want to do Arduino programming or something like that, they will give you numbers for each of the different skill types that they have, which is beginner, intermediate, and expert. And they'll have rates for that, and these are the average rates that basically all the clients on the platform roughly pay for people of these skill levels. So you can kind of use that as a jumping off point, and then as you get better and gain more experience, you can kind of work your way up and see where it takes you.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I would like to add on to that. In addition to Upwork's listing like that, you also have the other people sitting in this room with you who can tell you what they charge, or people in this room who hire freelancers who can tell you what the freelancers they work with charge. And so and obviously that number is going to be, and the same thing Tiffany was talking about with Upwork being global. Even if you say in the United States, we are able, because of the cost of living here, we are able to underprice a lot of people who have to live on the coasts. And so that can be an advantage, especially if you're starting out. You can do something for cheaper at the same quality, and because you don't have to charge as much because your costs are lower. But then that's also an advantage as you get farther along, because then you can say, oh, I'm just going to charge what people in San Francisco would charge, because you don't have to undercut any people anymore. You're able to build out your schedule enough that you can, again, kind of take a risk and bid high on something, because if you don't get it, you'll still be okay. So yeah, you can use that to your advantage. But I would just say also look local, and ask in the Discord, ask on other places. I mean, there's lots of places to do this, but networking, that's going to be another answer I give on a lot of these, is networking, talking to people who do what you do or do things that are complementary to what you do.
So that might be the answer to our next question too. How do you find clients in your local area? Because I want to work with local people. Networking is probably the answer. Is there any other method that you use to find? Is it sometimes just like word of mouth, like after a while you just kind of build a reputation?
I mean, yeah, I mean, so yes, most of my, well, 100% of the work I get is word of mouth. And that's because I've been doing it and I have a reputation for doing a good job and doing what I say I'll do. And yeah, I mean, you just, again, like you do enough work and you do a good job that ideally, so another trick, two tricks I'll give you. One is, somebody working as a freelancer for like an agency who has to sub stuff out is much better than working for a freelancer for a retail store. Because for the retail store, you're going to build them a great website. You might get a little recurring revenue, like maybe you could set up a maintenance agreement where you'll do their updates and whatever for $500 a year or whatever. But an agency is going to be great because you'll do a great job, and then they're going to go out and get more and more work, and then they're going to get too much work, and they're going to call you because you got them out of a bind last time, and they'll hire you again. And so finding ways to get recurring work from the people you've already built a relationship with is the best. And so yeah, the two types of that are like find somebody who goes out and gets the clients and then has you do some of that work, and then build relationships with clients that you can put them on a retainer. So like, yeah, a basic annual hosting retainer and maintenance, like that's great. But if you can find a company that's big enough and you build like an app for them that's going to need to continue to evolve, then you can get a monthly retainer. And like that gives you like this cushion where you can kind of take that risk and like up your rate elsewhere. So like I have clients that I've had a retainer with since like 2016, and I still charge them my hourly rate from 2016. Actually, I raised it once, but like all of my new clients, they have a different rate that's much higher because I can. So yeah, getting that recurring money is a good trick.
I agree with reaching out to agencies. I would definitely be open to anyone looking to contract.
Miranda is very interested in hearing from anyone who wants to talk.
I might want to hire someone right now, but we do contract out.
Me too. I should have plugged my full-time job. Who wants to come teach full-time? Zach, did you have anything to say about getting clients locally? I know sometimes you're kind of in a hybrid space between what you do on Upwork and then sometimes finding people here. Talk about how that works.
Most of my work is online through clients, though I guess I'd chime this in just as more an anecdotal thing, but it still fits with this question. Is that one of the other things I'll do is electronics repair, typically of music gear, keyboards, synths, guitars, and stuff on the side. So I'll pick stuff up on the cheap, fix it, and then I'll sell it. And I've sold things here locally through Facebook Marketplace, and I'll mention in the thing, like this thing's been totally, like fully restored, refurbished, it's been electronically serviced. And I got a bunch of questions for people who didn't even want to buy what I posted, but wanted to know if I would fix their crap for them. Because it's such a niche thing, and it's kind of hard to find people who have knowledge enough to do something like that without just sending it away, or maybe if it's vintage or there's just nowhere to send it to. So yes, I've actually had some local clients where that's what they've done, where like I've gotten people through word of mouth just because, like I heard from this guy, it's like, oh yeah, like I just like mode that's like broken. They even want to like fix it or take a look, see what's wrong with it. It's like, sure, and I have. It's been very good. So I mean, there definitely is, word of mouth is still very important.
Yeah, so if you have broken junk, you didn't even talk about what broken junk really means. Keyboards, synthesizers, consoles, small home electronics, Hamilton Beach coffee makers. All right, so our next question is about freelancing around your full-time job, that's probably what I excel at, because I've never freelanced full time. Like I've never like made that leap. I think that's incredibly brave for people that kind of start out freelancing on the side and then decide that they're making enough money that they can make that transition. But for me, it's really just about time management. So not only understanding how long something is going to take, which when you're new is really challenging just as a part of development. You know, really understanding when you're looking at a problem, how long it might take you to fix it and doing that kind of estimation. But then your own time management of how much time do I have to give so that you're not taking on more work or biting off more than you can chew. And sometimes that does mean that you're turning down work, because I'll have periods where people are coming back and saying, hey, you did this for me previously, but can we do something else? Or I want to build onto this, or I want to fix this. You know, and they'll come to me with stuff that they've had, and I don't want this to sound too disparaging, but sometimes offshore companies don't always do a great job. And then someone ends up on my doorstep and says, can you please fix this hot mess I've already paid for? But if I don't have the time, then sometimes I can make a referral, which again, that's why networking is important, because if I can't do the work, maybe I know someone who can do the work. But I've also had people tell me they'll wait, which I honestly kind of get creeped out sometimes. I'm like, you like me that much? Okay, get in the queue. But being in education the way that I am, I do get these long periods of time, generally over the summer, where I can take on larger projects and things like that. Sometimes the timing just doesn't work out. So that's really how it works. You have to make sure that you're really balancing your time and what time is important to you. I know plenty of people that spend their weekends freelancing. I won't do that. I'm very protective of my free time. And so if you have family time and kids and things like that, and you don't have as many hours in the day, then maybe you're only doing small one-off little projects here or there to kind of get a feel for freelancing and make a little bit of side money, and kind of just build from what you're doing. So I don't know if Charlie, you're more of a full-timer. Zach, that's your whole gig is freelancing. I'm super jealous because he's always like just doing his own thing, and I'm like, you don't go to work. It's so great. we're interrupting Charlie's dinner time.
Ooh, I got 4 stars from Wheelhouse, and it's serious. Yeah, I would say, so when I made that jump to full-time freelancing, like I said, I quit my job right before my first kid was born. But the only reason I was able to do that is because my spouse had a full-time job and was able to float us for a few months. And I had been getting like some requests from people who's like people I had worked with or people who I met at things like this, who said like, hey, I'm doing this side thing. Do you ever take on freelance work? And I had done it, but time management is just hard. Even when it's your full-time job, it's really hard. Like estimation is really hard. And I had just become overwhelmed, and I think I just had like 2 requests at a time. I was like, oh, 2 freelance requests. I could do this full time. Like I'll just always have at least 2. And I mean, for the most part, it worked out that way. But again, I had my spouse to lean on for extra income to support us during that. So that's tangentially related to the question, I guess.
No, I think that's important. Like it's one thing to just be like a single person and you're the only income holding the household together, versus having a spouse that can kind of support you while you make that transition, or at least a healthy savings balance, which can be challenging to have as well. So that all goes into being able to make that leap. But I think freelancing on the side of a full-time job is totally doable. It's just up to you on how much of that time is really available for work, and then being choosy about the jobs that you take. So the next couple of questions are kind of Upwork specific. How many years of industry experience do you recommend engineers acquire before freelancing with Upwork? And I would say that the answer to this really isn't necessarily a number, but you have to be able to do something that somebody wants, and you have to be able to do it with quality. And so even if it's like the most basic little HTML and CSS thing, or you're just doing like formulas in building like Excel spreadsheets, or things that maybe we would consider kind of basic, someone will pay you for it. Someone out there doesn't have that skill, they're going to pay you for it. And what I find on Upwork a lot is some of the people that post jobs, they're perfectly capable of doing the job, they just don't have the time. So they're just looking for someone to kind of delegate that work to, and they know whether or not you're going to do a good job, like based on your skill set, and they could probably sit down and do it themselves, but like I said, they just don't have the time. So they're just kind of looking for someone to delegate that work out. So a lot of times, when you're looking at those kinds of projects, you're working with them in more of a partnership, because it's not like, oh, I'm going to develop this thing and you know nothing about programming, so here's this program and you think it's great. It's, oh, I could have built this thing myself, but I'm going to let you do it, and then if you don't do it right, I'm going to know. And so whether it's that kind of situation or not, I mean, you really can't put a number on it. It's just, can you do the work, and can you do it to a level that someone will pay you to do it? And with reputation-based sites like Upwork, you really do have to be careful, because if you get enough low ratings, then no one will hire you, because there's plenty of people on the platform with good ratings and badges and all kinds of stuff that if you're down there in the 70%, 3-star area, you're getting filtered out of most searches anyway, because there's some cool checkboxes on the side where they're like 90 or higher, and then they just never see you. So that would just be that's just my general opinion of how it works. I know that there's plenty of people on Upwork doing things that we necessarily wouldn't consider to be highly skilled labor. They are doing data entry projects, they're doing data cleaning, they're doing, I won't say transcription is pretty highly skilled, that's really difficult to do. But I was thinking more along the lines of copy-paste jobs, stuff like that. That work's not hard, anyone could do it, but does it make enough money for you to be happy? Because those are typically the kinds of jobs that, they're $5, they're $10, and maybe, people in the United States aren't really interested in doing that kind of work. But if you can build a basic HTML like CSS thing, sure, I'm sure someone will pay you to do that. So it's just really about skill set and marketing yourself. And I think, like I said at the beginning, that portfolio is probably one of the more important pieces. It's not so much years of experience, it's what are you capable of actually doing.
Yeah, and I would expand on that. So yeah, I also said like get a bunch of experience, and that'll tell you a lot of these things. I think to clarify, like having technical experience and being able to do the job that the person needs done is like obviously a huge thing, but just as huge is all the stuff that surrounds that. So communication, particularly with like setting expectations up front. So like making sure you fully understand what the client needs. And again, if you can understand why they need it and why it's valuable to the business, then there's two types. So I've worked with people via Upwork where like they were already on a project I was on, or the person who hired me said we need to get some more help and I want to use Upwork. But there's typically like two types of freelancers you come across, and you can probably guess which typically has more success. There's the first, which is like they write, they can do Vue, they understand a bunch of front end stuff, and you look at their portfolio like, yeah, this is good. But then you go to work with them and you find out that they require very, very specific direction. So like you can't explain like, oh, hey, we're building this web app and here's the My Account page. Can you make it? And then they just like kind of throw it up there, and it's like, ugh, then you have to say, well, okay, so we need to be able to do these things. Here's this little contrived example. But basically, like some people need you to like spell out every little thing that you need them to do, the freelancer. And then there's some people who you say, we need an account page, and they say, oh, can I see the, well, hopefully they have API documentation. Can I see that? What are we doing on the account page? Like, what's the purpose of this? And how does this fit in the context? And like you see like the whole picture, and you really understand that you're not, as a freelancer, you're not there to, I mean, if you want to take a job where you turn a design into HTML, CSS, that's great. But when you get into more stuff like web apps and things like that, you really need to be able to problem solve for the business, and like you need to have a little bit of understanding of UX design, and like some of those best practices that'll come with experience. But also, like I said, talking to the non-technical person and saying, oh, you need a customer portal where people can come pay their bills or whatever, and then you need to be able to um, say, here's what it's going to do. Like, I understand the problem of the business is this needs to happen. I can build something that will make that happen through these things, so that they don't think they're getting this full, like, to them maybe customer portal also means like a marketing website as well. So like you gotta be able to set expectations up front, make sure that you communicate how you're doing and all those things, and that's what really makes a great freelancer. Like, if the code you put out like is a little buggy, they're going to be way more chill about it because they trust you, because you understand them and you understand what you're actually doing. Because at the end of the day, you are helping their business. You are not just making this fun project for them out of code. Like, you serve a purpose, and if you like embrace that purpose and add value that way, that goes so far. And and those are the people who'll come back and recommend you because you brought more value beyond some code.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you still hear him okay? All right. The online was telling me you're kind of loud, Charlie, so I turned you down just
I can get louder.
Okay. That's totally good. Yes, do that. So the next question is about how do you make sure you get paid? Do you have recommendations for tools or software? This is where Upwork excels. They have an escrow system. You can almost guaranteed to get paid. But when you are not working on a platform like that, yeah, do you have any input on how to get paid?
That doesn't involve?
That doesn't involve Upwork? Show up at their house?
Oh,
Keep their keyboard? Collateral. Charlie's gonna answer all these questions because we're just like, I don't know, use Upwork.
If I don't get paid, then you don't get your stuff back.
Yeah, if you don't get paid, you don't get your stuff back. It's a good, I mean, that's.
Oh yeah.
You hear about developers
That's
putting
good.
all kinds of funny stuff in their code to make sure that they get paid or their website blows up or whatever, but I've never thought those were very ethical ways of handling yourself.
Yeah, I would not recommend that. In fact, I get a lot of work that way from like somebody who hates their previous developer, and when the developer found out that they were going to hire somebody else, they like redirected their website or just like took stuff down, and it's just like, come on. But no, I would say, and this goes along with communication. Have a contract. It doesn't have to be super legally binding. It just write down, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to pay me for. And then also get half up front. If you're not worked with a person before and you don't have like somebody who knows them who referred you or whatever. If you know somebody, like if you have a reason to trust this person, you don't have to be a stingy, but having a contract, again, even if it's an email, just saying like, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to charge you. I'm going to charge you this at this point. I'm going to charge you at that point. And here's the date we're shooting for. Maybe make sure that they know that you might not hit this date, or if they're like, no, we absolutely have to hit this date, then make sure that they know. Make sure you can do it, or make sure that they know that they're going to have to make some concessions if that date's approaching and you're not 100% there. But again, communicate. Get money up front if you don't know them. Ideally, again, you get a reputation and you start working with better clients. You know how, like, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but like if people, like when actors are getting interviewed and they're asking these questions like, what would you tell a young actor just starting out? And they're always like, don't just take any script, wait for a good script. And that's kind of true here too. Like, I mean, I would not say don't take any project, because like, especially when you're starting out, you need to have the work for sure. But realize that if you're just taking any project and they're hiring you because you're cheap, they might not be the best client to work with. And you're going to get a crappy project every now and then doing that. And just accept it and do what you can to mitigate that risk. But eventually, like I said, as you kind of like as this begins to snowball, you can start turning things down, and you'll just start getting better clients, and it'll all be better.
Yeah, no, that's big advice right there about some clients just aren't worth it, and they're generally the ones who don't pay very well. And so they're gonna be the ones that are nagging you all the time about a million changes. They're gonna be scope creeping all over the place. They're not gonna respect your boundaries. They just, there's so much more headache than what they're worth, and they're not even really paying you what you're worth. So it's like,
Trying to rip you off.
they're trying to rip you off. Yeah, sometimes that's true too. And so, yeah, there's definitely a benefit to being picky about the work that you take. So there's some
Yeah, some people are just brutal, like capitalists who are just like, I'm gonna exploit the heck out of this random person I found on Upwork, and it's gonna be terrible. But this is capitalism, and it's dog eat dog, and I'm gonna eat this dog because they're a random person, and so I'm gonna just squeeze every little thing I can out. And that's how some of these people think, and they're the ones who are trying to hire the cheapest person. They're gonna have the highest expectations almost every time.
So there's a couple of questions in here about, like, I made an Upwork profile, but I haven't been able to get hired or anything. I'll make you an offer, because there's really not a good answer. I can't just tell you what you're probably doing wrong, although I'll probably tell you it's your proposals that suck. But if you want me to look at your profile and give you some success partner critiquing, I'm more than happy to do that. You can hit me up in the Discord. I'll put my email in the Twitch chat for those of you who are listening at home. And I'm happy to take a look at your profiles, your portfolios, your cover letters, whatever you're doing on Upwork. Because really that's, as a success partner, that's what I do. I kind of just get all this data, and then I have a bunch of just tips and best practices of what we know works. And so, yeah, I'm happy to look over stuff. Just, if you'll pile on me, just, get in the queue. I'll get to you. But I'm happy to take a look at your stuff and try to see if I can point you in the right direction. Maybe you're just doing something weird. Sometimes that's the way it goes. So let me put the email in the chat, but the next question is, have you ever had a terrible client you didn't want to work with anymore? And how did that work out? You ever had to fire a client? I'm just gonna give him this microphone.
Twice, actually. They were almost like back-to-back as weird, because I've had a good string where I've not had to deal with any of this, and then earlier this year I had two back-to-back that did not end up panning out in different ways. The first one initially seemed pretty good, and like, yeah, I figured like charge nothing or like charge actually this, but also like, because Upwork does take a small fee out of anything you make on the platform, and it varies depending on how much money you have with a client. So after you've hit certain tiers, then they take less of a percentage, but it's over your interaction with that client, just in general, not even for that one project. So if you do a lot of repeat work with somebody, it's favorable because you'd just be making more. And this guy's like, oh yeah, like I'll just, like I also don't want to like reimburse you for like fees are taken and stuff like that. He's like, checks or something. It's weird. And then it ended up panning out that he was completely unreasonable and very bizarre person. And he was one of these people where, I see this a lot. You might see this doing software dev too, freelancing, but there's a lot of times where I'll do stuff where someone has an idea for a thing that, they have this product that they want to develop to take to market, but they don't actually they have the idea, and then basically hire me to realize that idea in physical form.
And they'll give you 10%, right?
Oh, don't spoil the second one. But yeah, so for some of that is usually a lot of work, depending, like especially doing hardware from scratch. They don't even have they don't even have a design PCB like a bomb. They don't know what they need. They just like, hey, I want a thing that does this. Can you do it? And I had a person who was like this, but he already had kind of like a thing working per se, and but he was one of these people where the initial point I was going with this was, he's one of these people where like they won't tell you enough about what they want to do because it's a special thing. No one's gonna steal it.
You could steal their idea, yeah.
So they don't tell you the whole thing, but they give you pieces. But they don't like. This guy's thing was that he wanted me to sign. He didn't. Well, he never brought up like. He's like, we'll just do like an NDA later. So instead of upfront, which now is my new policy, that if you're gonna have me work on.
Mike swears all the time. Say
Okay.
all the swear
Yeah,
words
so
you
if you want me to
want.
work, so my new policy is if you want me to work on your shit, I sign an NDA would be required at some point. I sign up front. I don't even care because this guy made it so unreasonable because he would just I don't know enough to even work on all of it because there's so many like factors of these weird mystery things and like handling all this stuff as that by the time it finally came to do the work to put into making the PCB for this piece of hardware, by the time he finally told me everything, it's like it was a Thursday evening when I finally had like enough information and we're like, okay, yeah, we'll do this. And then he wanted a complete like board ready to like fully designed board and the design files ready by, he initially said Wednesday, which, okay, that's a little bit of a crunch, but that's not bad. And I'd be okay. So he's saying like to send them off Wednesday. I wake up to an email that was sent Sunday night saying that he didn't think it was gonna like work out or didn't have like enough time or something because he's like this needs to be like I want these by Monday to review them. I don't know what he wanted to review them for because he doesn't. That's my job. He paid me to do this. And so he basically then just basically goes to drop the whole thing. And look, we stuck with it. It was just a whole big pain in the ass. And it was the thing where like, because I pulled like, I was up for like 36 hours like trying to cram in part of this. I pulled an all-nighter on a Sunday only to like, we get to an email on Monday. Be like, oh hey, yeah, I'm actually gonna need any of that or whatever. And then dude just disappeared. I've not heard anything from him. It was infuriating. So people probably like promise some weird stuff like that. Just ignore it. I wouldn't even do work with them anymore. The other person was a similar thing where I actually did get paid on that, and I got paid for the original board. And then afterwards, he wanted to work in like talk of because it's a hardware startup around this idea that I don't believe I can talk about, but. So I spun a board for him, and he's like, okay. And then there was like talk like assembling one of these, and then doing all this other stuff, and then dude super ghosted or whatever, and like had this thing where he was talking to like getting like percent cuts and stuff of like whatever might happen later and all these other things, and doing work on that premise. Don't do that. That is bullshit. It's almost never gonna happen. If you're doing
Yes.
work or anything, like get it in writing, get it in somewhere. Don't take the promise of being paid later to do work for free right now.
Right, or like, we'll do this small project now, but I got a lot more work coming down the road, don't you worry. Like, don't do that either.
No.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't have any horror stories. I mean, the closest thing I have is I've had a few projects where almost the inverse happened, where the client was like too nice and too like I was working on it and I'd want to like check in on how things are going, and then they just be like, oh yeah, it's all great, it's all good, and like wouldn't really like give me any feedback on anything, and it was just everything was fine, it was fine until like the deadline arrived and they finally looked at it and they're just like, what's going on? Why isn't this working? And I was just like, you've not given me anything. And so, fortunately it ended well, like as well as something like that could end. But I've not really had anything too terrible. I don't know if you've seen, and this goes into the red flags question too. The subreddit choosing beggars. Have you guys ever been there? Yeah, so it's basically just screenshots, mostly of texts to creative people, where someone's like, hey, can you do this thing for me that you do for a living? And then they say, yeah, I'll send you my rates. And then they say, oh, I was thinking you do it for free. I have 500 Instagram followers. And stuff like that. Like, I think basically, like, yeah, people who promise exposure, promise future work, or just like generally don't value what you're doing and feel real entitled. Those are the people that are bad news bears.
Yeah, so leading into our next question about red flags for clients that you can look out for kind of during that initial either proposal or interview, or kind of determining whether this is the right job for you. And it depends on the project for me. Like, if it's gonna be one of those, you know, I've had someone build this thing for me and it's not working, will you please fix it? I won't just jump into a hot mess. I don't have time for that. So, you know, we can negotiate a couple of hours where I'll sign your NDA and look at your code base, and you can pay me for a couple hours to go through it. And if it's too hot of a mess, then I'm gonna pass that off to somebody else. There's just some messes that really you can't fix. You got to start over. And some of these offshore teams will create some real hot messes, especially in like Xamarin, but that's another story. I've had some people on Upwork that have started being real shady, like right after the contract is open. Like, they're cool during the interview part, like maybe we hop on a Zoom and talk it over, and they seem fine, and you get the files and stuff, and you're looking at it, and then they start getting real weird, like within a few hours, like they're already messaging you and wanting to add more stuff or ask a bunch of questions, and you're just like, all right, hold on, and you try to get it sorted out, and then sometimes you can just tell they're going to be like that. They're going to be like super clinger, deadline changer, and sometimes, you know, because Upwork it's got the two-way rating system, so you get the reviews on the clients as well. So you can go through and kind of see if other people wrote some things that are vaguely alarming, because people won't come out and straight up just be like, this guy's a jerk. No, they'll be like, oh, a client was a nice guy, but he kind of moves the deadlines around a lot, and I didn't like that. And so you kind of have to do your research, and we've got this weird thing, I guess, especially in American culture, where we don't like to not rate people 5 stars. And so when given the 5-star thing, they're like, oh, well, I guess they were like 4.25. And they were like the worst person you ever worked with in your life. Like, no one will just give 1 star or something. I don't know. It's just too offensive. So on platforms like that, like, red flags are sometimes hard to pick up on. And if the contract has just started and I've just kind of like gone through some stuff and we haven't even I haven't even done really anything yet, there's not really any billable time, I'll just close the contract and just be like, you got to find someone else. I'm sorry, I can't do this. Reputation-wise, that won't hurt you. If you haven't billed for any time, you could just bail out right there at the beginning. But as far as, like, Charlie, you talked a little bit about some red flags. Are there any other things that people need to look out for?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, people that are disrespectful or take you for granted, I mean, that's just a general thing. And I think to mitigate against some of the things you said, it goes back to like having that contract and having stuff written down. And, you know, you present it, if we mentioned confidence early on, like if you confidently say, I'm excited, you know, if you can like be very, and you know, you can be genuine about this. You can say, I'm excited for your project. This sounds really fun. Or like, it's a good fit for what I do. Like, you can find ways to be positive about it. And then you say, I have a contract that really outlines exactly what we're doing here, how I do things. I like, and talk about yourself, even if this is your first one, talk about it like, I like to do things this way. And you know, you say it confidently, like you're not there, even if you are, because it's your first freelance project, you're not there saying, thank you so much for believing in me to do this, I won't let you down. You're saying, you know, I'm glad we were able to have this mutually beneficial partnership. I think what we've discussed sounds great. I've notated all the expectations right here. If anything deviates from here, I'm happy to adjust the scope and the quote or whatever. And you know, if you're just very confident about here's the way I do things, and you're very polite and genuine, then I mean that goes a really long way. And you know, I think there's people who, if they're not expecting that and they don't want that, you'll kind of pick up that this person is not getting the person to walk on like they had hoped, and you can bail.
Yeah, setting and expressing boundaries right? Like all healthy relationships. If you don't work weekends, be clear about it. If you're not gonna get this done until like maybe longer than they're expecting, just be upfront about it. Like that's a lot of problems with freelancing can just be overcome with really clear and direct communication. And sometimes I think people just try to like skirt it because they don't wanna come out and say that they're not gonna meet some expectation, but you're so much better just being direct about what's happening or what they can expect from you. And if it's not a match, it's not a match. If you're trying to force it, then yeah, someone's gonna be unhappy in the end, I think. The top question right here is, do you ever move off Upwork with a client to avoid the platform fees? I don't know that anyone is going to directly admit to violating Upwork's terms of service in public. Trust, safety, and compliance is vicious and swift on Upwork. If they think that you've done that, they will just ban your account. I don't want my account banned. Honestly, you're paying Upwork for a service. You're paying for the escrow service. You're paying for trust and safety to monitor for scams and things like that, for keeping bad actors off the platform. You are hopefully working within the guidelines of payment protection. So even if the client does something super shady and tries not to pay you, Upwork is going to pay you anyway. And
That would be the biggest thing for me is.
yeah, so Zach's got a story.
Oh, this is much shorter. It was just basically disagreeing with that. Like the biggest thing is that you'll see a lot of people who will want to, before contract, engage communication off the platform, which is against the US, and if you're caught doing that, you're just banned. And where people do that, sometimes like these newer clients and they don't know this thing, so I just like tell them, we always see it quite a bit, but then like this two people I mentioned before, where I was like doing this thing where I had to like basically force them to go through the platform to get something started. Because like once you're under contract, they don't care because it's already set out. You're already tied to that. But the biggest thing, like at least as far as somebody doing something where you see a posting on the platform and they want to do it around that, I wouldn't even touch it just because of those two other stories. Because there's no protection, you don't have any way to guarantee that you are protected in case they want to stiff you, take the work and run, basically just not get compensated for the work that you put in. It's not even worth it.
What about like subsequent projects? So like I've heard about this where somebody will like do a couple projects with a client over Upwork, and then once they've like, hey, this is a good relationship, then like they'll just take it offline and do that in the future.
That's
Is
technically
that
against the terms. If you want to work with the client outside of Upwork, you're supposed to pay Upwork a release fee, and then you're free to work with that client outside of Upwork indefinitely. But if you found them and sourced them through the platform, you're supposed to keep all engagements with them on the platform until you've had that release fee paid. The release fee depends on some different factors. It's not just a set price.
interesting?
I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but that is technically against the terms to do that. And yeah, even if the client does something like, if they charge back off their credit card what they paid into Upwork escrow, but you followed all the guidelines for payment protection for that work, Upwork is gonna pay you anyway. And then they are the ones who will pursue payment for the person who charged back. And so that's what you're paying for. Like that's, you agree to those fees, and I know they're kind of high when you're just getting started because, like Zach mentioned, the more you work with a particular client, the fees get lower. But you are kind of just buying that service to take a load off of invoicing and payments, and some of that's just reporting too. If you're doing a lot of work and you need to show your accountant a bunch of things at the end of the year, then you've got a nice place where all of those reports happen. But yeah, don't violate the terms. They'll ban your account. What do you do when you're dealing with burnout? Therapy? Hide under the desk? Like
Yeah,
I have this whole last year?
Yeah, I go to the Alamo. I play video games.
Yeah.
I go somewhere with my kids. I don't know. I don't know. This is probably a general question. I think anybody could answer this. We all get burned out sometimes.
Yeah. Coping mechanisms, yeah. help
I
with
mean, I
that.
think the obvious answer is book less work so you aren't burnt out.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, recognize that burnout is real, that it's not like you might be able to do a couple weeks where you're doing 60 hours a week, 60 or 70 hours a week, but like by week 4 or 5 of that, you're just going to be like, you'll be dead inside and your work's going to suffer for it and it'll just be this downward spiral. So just like err on the safe side.
Mhm. Time management, healthy habits. Do you have anything about burnout? Drink a lot. I'm just painting a good picture up here. All right, so what's your opinion on platforms like Fiverr and Reddit for freelance work? I can't say I've used either one of those. I know what Fiverr is.
People freelance through Reddit.
People freelance through Reddit. That's a good question. I suppose.
I've gotten jobs through Reddit actually.
What's that like?
The for hire subreddit and the hiring subreddit is actually really good. It's very active. I actually made a contact with an agency somewhere in the Northeast and did a few projects with them in that, and so it was a good. And there's no fees. I mean, you don't get all the protection and stuff that Upwork gives you, but I have found that you do get a mix of people who are like don't know what stuff costs and don't want to pay more than $100 for a new website. But most of the time, there were well, and I should caveat this that this was like 6 or 7 years ago that I did this, so I don't know what it's like today. But like the community is really good about trying to like filter out the crappy job offers and the people who want to take advantage of you. So I would actually recommend it. I think it's worthwhile. And I've hired a subcontractor off of there who didn't really work out, but I don't think it was Reddit's fault.
Yeah, there's a lot of sites out there. Yeah, freelancer.com, Fiverr, I guess Reddit. I'm sure there's a lot of different places where you have like this environment where you can kind of post a job or something like that, or I think Charlie froze, that's a good face. From our research at Upwork, we know that the biggest problem we try to overcome is clients know that there's a lot of different freelancing websites out there, so they'll take their job and they'll post it on 4 or 5 different ones to cast a wider net, which makes sense, but from a platform perspective, that means sometimes there's a lot of dead jobs. The job just expires and it looks like they never hired anyone, but it's really because they found them somewhere else. And that's the same problem that they're having is maybe they found them on Upwork and now the job on Fiverr or the job on freelancer.com and everything just dies. And so all of these platforms kind of have that same problem. There's not really a good way to like combat that. And so freelancers sometimes feel discouraged that they're making proposals to jobs and then it looks like the client doesn't hire them when in fact I go pull their records and it's like, well, this client didn't hire anybody. It wasn't you, it was nobody. And so did they just not find who they wanted and just couldn't find someone that they felt could do the work? Could they not find someone to do it in their price range? Or did they just find it somewhere else and they didn't make that engagement on Upwork? And so that's part of it is like you've got these job posts and they're all over the place, and so you'll see them on multiple sites. And then you have a different problem where people will win work on one site and then subcontract it and post it on another. So it's like, oh yeah, I can totally make this cool WordPress website for you for $500, and then I go over to Freelancer and I post it for $100. And then you do that work and I'll turn it into this client and make my $400. So that's a different problem, but it's definitely something that happens with all of these different freelance websites. All right, so are there tools that you use to calculate project timelines? I'm guessing they mean estimating, like estimating the amount of time that it takes to do a job. Do you have any tools?
I do. Zach, have something?
Did you say you just have a formula? Like a spreadsheet?
Yeah, that's my answer. And I dig into that, but you go first.
I guess it would depend on how much experience, like, I guess you have. because if you're starting out, it might be kind of hard to know, to give a good idea on a time estimate for delivering on whatever work it is you're supposed to do. I mean, as you get more experience, I think it becomes a lot easier about knowing about how long it'll take to do something. Though even if you do have a good idea of how long it's going to take to do something, I would say, like, I usually work in any time estimate. I'll take however long I think it's going to take, and then I'll just add like 20% on top of it, just for unforeseen things that might take longer. It may not be as bad. Just doing something but like in hardware and stuff like that, it's like you could just run into a thing where like you can just eat an afternoon or something that just, you know, stuff pops up. So it's like, I would say, at least in estimates, it's better to give them an estimate of a higher amount and deliver faster than what they think than to give them an estimate and have to push it back.
I agree.
Yeah, I would echo 100% of that.
It's like,
Oh, Tiffany, you blinked out. You're back.
yeah, it's like Discord just has like a fit for a moment.
Wacky Discord.
It's
Yeah, so there's two things to consider with an estimate. The first is what it's going to cost because of your hourly rate. But the other thing is like how long it will take you. So like you have to you kind of got to do them separate. So like whenever I'm estimating something, I have to consider my current workload, and then how long I think it'll take me, and what that works out to at my hourly rate. So that's kind of how it starts. Is like I kind of have an hourly rate I start with. I say it'll probably take me this long, therefore the cost will be that, and I'll say, ooh, that seems kind of low. I'm either I'm underestimating or the value is higher and I should just bump it up anyway. But then I also have to look into like, you know, oh, they want this in December. It's September. I'm already committed to 2 other projects that I know are like 80, 120-hour projects. I got to do the math and be like, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to hit their deadline. So just make sure you keep both in mind. And especially when you're starting out, like I said, if you have like, this is what I want my ideal rate to be, you know, presumably that's based off of your budget that you live by in your personal life or your family life or whatever. And then like you have to like say, okay, how much am I comfortable? Like, yes, you should definitely bump it up. And if that price is too high or the timeline doesn't fit, say, okay, how much am I willing to work overtime for this? And how much am I willing to work below my rate for this? Like, are there other reasons I need to do this? So yeah, so that's my answer. And yeah, I just use a spreadsheet. It's just line items that I estimate in, I don't know what the word is. It's like used in Agile where like you do like, it's like an hour of work, it's a quarter day, it's a half day, it's a day, or it's 2 days, or it's a week. Like, don't get into like, this will take me 3.25 hours, that'll take me 4.75. Like, no one's that accurate. Just say, is this an hour? Is this a quarter a day, half a day, a full day, 2 days, or a week? And just like, and if it's a week, then you need to get more granular with it probably, and you've not really thought through what it's going to take. So that can help you with accuracy too.
Tangentially, this makes me think of, do you ever have someone ask you about taking on a project and you don't really want to do it, so you just quote them an insane number and then sometimes they actually take you up on it? They're like, oh,
yeah, I did that.
That's going to be like $2,000, man. And they're like, okay. And you're like, oh, crap.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's like someone, I'm just like, oh, I don't want to work with this person. And you're just like, and then you're just like, I'll throw a big number and maybe like that big number will
it's like a pain in
justify my pain. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Emotional distress money. Yeah, sometimes that's the way it works. Well, we talked a little bit about red flags. This question asks specifically about red flags involving contracts. Have you ever had a client try to sneak something into a contract?
The only thing I can think of is, and it depends on the nature of the project, but intellectual property clauses and things like that. I mean, I've never gotten into trouble with any of that, but there are some people who are just like, I want to own every character you press on that keyboard, and no matter what it is. And like, they're like, well, I'm building on open source software, so it doesn't really work that way. And they're just like, this clause cannot come out. And it's like, I don't know. And if they're not litigious, then it's not a big deal. And like, they're not going to be reading my other projects and looking for, you know, utility methods I reuse or whatever. So, but I don't know. I don't know. I'd say it's not so much about the red. Well, first off, I think you should try and write the contract so that you don't have to worry about that, because that way you're protecting you. And as long as you're looking at their contract and being like, if I wrote this, how would I want to handle this element of our business arrangement? And if it's different, then like speak up and like, again, be willing to like kind of talk about why, hi wife, talk about this or that. Yeah, like just again, if you can speak with confidence and like coming from a place of like, let's make this mutually beneficial. Like obviously you're trying to protect yourself, but you should speak up for yourself is what I'm saying. And if they're not down, then walk away.
And I'm not a lawyer, but any ambiguity in a contract is always in the favor of the party who didn't draft it. So just deal with that as you will. I think we probably answered this one a little bit already. When we decide to outsource or contract out work, they hate turning down work. Do we instead just do a referral? That's what I do. If I'm going to turn down work, I at least want to hook them up with somebody. Sometimes it's not always possible, but at least I'm like, hey, reach out to so-and-so and see if maybe they're available. Or I'll reach out ahead of time and just say like, hey, are you available? Are you interested? Do you want me to make an introduction? I did that earlier today, actually, on a Python project because I'm not into it. And they were like, well, do you know anybody? In fact, I do. Let me make sure I can give out their email address. And so, yeah, that's where networking really comes in handy. And that way, I mean, and it's one of those, and it's nice. Like you feel like you're doing something nice that keeps that relationship nice and friendly. And maybe they'll come back to you later when they need something else, or maybe you just gave your client away. I don't know. Usually not.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So like I do think so the question says like, when do you decide to outsource it? So like when do you kind of keep a hand in it versus just handing it off? And I think the answer is like, I'm not going to keep a hand in it if I'm not adding any value. Like there are some times when like I'll get like someone needs a WordPress marketing site, and I know somebody who's competent at WordPress, but they're really good at turning designs into websites. And so like I'll say like, yeah, I'll own the project. I'm going to sub out like 80% of it to this person, but then I'm going to be the one who comes in and like make sure, hooks things up, plugs things together, maybe handles this one integration that I know this other person won't be able to do. And in that case, I'll keep a hand in it. And then similarly, I would not mark up the other person's rate. Like I would just pass it through. I mean, if I would account for like any hours that I'm going to need to communicate with them, but like I would never say, what's your estimate? Oh, 300 hours. Okay, well, and what's your rate? $100. Oh, I'm going to charge 125 at 100 hours or whatever. Like I think if you come from a place of like integrity and trying to like do what's best for everybody involved, then a lot of these questions answer themselves. And karma is good. You make referrals. At the very least, they'll send you a $20 gift card to Coffee Ethic. At most, they'll send referrals back your way whenever they're too busy. So being good will beget you good things too.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes you may even be able to just like team up. So maybe it's a project and part of it's kind of something you're interested in or in your wheelhouse, but part of it isn't. And I was thinking of, we had a conversation previously about a project that didn't pan out, but they were having you build something, but then they also needed a mobile app. And then you were like, do you want to talk about doing this part of it? And then it just didn't pan out. But sometimes you can have like, you can buddy up and get the work done where you're maybe doing part of it and then you're kind of making that referral to do part of it too. And so that's another great way that you can kind of make those connections and keep your client happy, keep the project going, things like that. Yeah, but I totally agree. Just like be on the up with integrity, clear communication, like most problems solve themselves. So the next question is about books or resources. What are the best books or resources when you're freelancing, business management, project management, etc.? I don't read books.
I never learned to read, so
textbooks.
I can't.
big
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could answer the resources part. I would say like I learned a lot reading just like blog articles from people who kind of do what I do, and like because a lot of people basically like what we're doing tonight, but in a blog form. Like there's a lot of that stuff that's out there. Um, a lot of these problems we're discussing are not unique to us or to software development in general. So like, there's lots of good advice out there. I don't have anything specific to recommend, but I mean, I say this a lot is like that first job I got out of college, um, I messed up a lot, and it was very valuable for me to mess up on someone else's dime. So like, I failed. There were like several projects where I just straight up failed, and had that been on Upwork, I would have gotten a really bad rating. But I did really good the rest of the time, and some of my bosses, and they were good people, so they also were like chill about it. Um, but yeah, I mean, experience and then also like learning. When I worked there, I was also able to get in on like the sales and the business side. Like I was just there to speak to the technical aspects, but I also got to like kind of see what worked and what didn't, in terms of how the business chose to handle all those like supplemental um, aspects that I just had never been exposed to before. Um, so yeah, experience, if you can get it, is probably the best resource.
Yeah, I didn't take like a how to freelance course or read a book or buy a Udemy or anything. Like I just started doing it, and then you learn from mistakes, you learn from experience. Yeah, you just throw yourself out there and hope you land on your feet. And yeah, even with the reputation system on Upwork, like sometimes you still screw up, and sometimes a client gives you a less than great rating, and you just kind of try to learn from whatever made that happen. Was it just a communication issue? Was it a bad match? Was it your own, whatever, you weren't able to do the work, you weren't able to deliver on time? Like, you just really try to have some like self-reflection about how you can improve on the experience and maybe not do that again if you have an unhappy client. So as someone new to the programming world, what should I focus on that will help me in the long run? When it comes to freelancing, I think we've established networking is the most important thing that you can do. And I think that just goes for whether we're talking about freelancing or we're talking about jobs. I think networking is super important. But is there anything else? I mean, because the programming skill, you're going to build that. Like, so it's like, yeah, you can learn programming stuff, but
Don't bite off more than you can chew. The only thing I can say that is, I mean, for certain things, because like at least working with hardware and that, like you're all like, there's not gonna be one person who knows how to do everything. There's gonna be things where like, you'll come to spots where you'll realize, oh hey, there's someone looking at this thing done. I've never worked with this one component of it, but I know how to do all of the stuff, or I know that I will be able to do the things and just look them up or like find a reference or something online or something like that, to where it's easy, you can just get kind of used to doing certain jobs. It's like, I've messed with this before, but I know I'm not in over my head. I know I'm not promising something that I probably can't turn around and deliver, that is actually good and quality. I think that would just be the biggest thing, at least that I could think to add on to that, is basically, like it's okay to like take on some stuff that might be challenging for you, but don't. I think it's reasonable to have some expectations and to try into some new areas, but also at the same time, don't dive all the way in and you only know how to do like 20% of it, because it'll probably not pan out.
Yeah, that's great advice, is like knowing what you don't know, and knowing like don't go into something like if you're completely blind, but like if you're doing something and yeah, if there's a piece of it that you're like, I know I can figure that out, maybe like read the docs real quick just to make sure that there's not some giant gap. But like, yeah, being able to push it but not too far. And really, I mean, and to that end, like just learning how to learn, like I say that a lot too about programming, is like, what we do is like a programming language more or less is like a different programming language is just syntax. So like, you know, if I needed to pick up some language I've never worked with, like I know I could, because, you know, programming is more about patterns and being able to structure things logically in your head and then turn that into code. And so I think like whenever I talk about programming, I say like that's what we do, is like there's always new frameworks, there's always new programming languages sometimes. There's always new stuff coming out that we're always learning. And so learning how to learn is like the key thing with programming. And it just takes practice like anything.
So the next question is not really about freelancing, but I left it in here because I thought we had probably a good answer. So where can someone find the appropriate resources to find internships within their degree field? I would say right here in this room is the right answer. There's so many people in this room that can connect you with internships and all kinds of job opportunities, but do we know of others that can help?
In the near future, sgf.dev for show. And then, yeah, just like everything else, networking. I know that depending on what school you go to, a lot of times the school has resources for connecting people with local businesses that need stuff. You know, reach out to the eFactory directly. Maybe they have client companies there that need people. I would assume, I don't know about virtual internships, but you know, you might be able to find something remote. But I don't know how valuable that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm old. Yeah.
Yeah, OTC's got some great resources in just the career employment services. They've got the college job board. If you're specifically a CIS student at OTC, make sure you're in my Discord, because that's where I post all the ones that I know about. So making sure all the information is connected. But I think sometimes jobs aren't necessarily called internships while they're still targeting that same market. You know, they're a part-time job or something like that. They're not putting internship in the title, but that's more of the expectation. So you can look for those kinds of jobs too. So we're on to our last question, because it's 8 o'clock, so we're going to start wrapping up. What do your retainer structures look like? And is there a set number of hours per week or per month or set days? So talking about retainers. I don't use retainers. You can't retain me. I don't have enough time for that.
So I spoke about retainers. I have a few, and one of them is, well, okay, yeah. So basically all of them, with the exception of one, there's like a monthly budget, and then that is turned, and I don't even turn it into hours necessarily. What I do is I have a board where they just like add things that need to be done, and then I'll go in and like we'll have a little back and forth clarifying what it is they're asking for, and then I have an estimated cost that I put on there, and it's more or less based on how long I think it'll take me, and then that goes on there, and then so that way we keep this backlog full of stuff that needs to get done. They all have values assigned, and you know they know they have $1,000 a month, so they can get $1,000 worth of stuff moved over, and then my commitment is basically like this will all be done by the end of the month. Sometimes I don't do it until like the 24th or the 25th or the 30th, and that's just the way it works sometimes. But that's like the main thing, and you know if they have like something that's more urgent, they'll indicate that, and I can accommodate it. But then like if I end up going over that budget, or if I go under it, that rolls over to the next month. And so I always allow rolling over to a certain degree. And it's basically like I will promise I will do up to $1,000 worth a month, and anything above that will be at my discretion. So like if I have enough room and they want to double that, then I'll just go ahead and do it. And then they're out of budget for the next month, or they just pay a one-off extra to cover that and get their retainer back. And then I have another retainer that I would not recommend doing it this way. I'm trying to get out of it, as a matter of fact. This arrangement, like the client's good, but this arrangement's not good. Basically, it's like I will give you 20 hours a month, and we'll just keep going if you need more than that. And it's bad. Don't do that.
I don't suppose retainers come into play. Can I put you on retainer and just fix things in my house? Like my dishwasher's making a noise.
This is not a good noise.
It's not a good noise. Yeah, it's a definitely bad noise. Yeah. I think sometimes the type of work really does come into play on whether a retainer makes sense. Like most of the jobs that I do, because of the time boxing that I have to do, are smaller, mostly one-off type of projects. And so I don't really attract or look for the types of clients that would even be looking for that kind of arrangement anyway. And so when I do find those larger projects, they're going off to someone else. So yeah, I've never had to work with that kind of structure. Well, that is our final question. So I hope everyone enjoyed this kind of format. I know we didn't get to all of the questions, but I'm going to post them in the Discord so that everyone can kind of see the pending questions that we didn't get to. And I don't want to speak for my panelists, but I'm happy to continue the conversation in Discord over the next couple of days if you want to talk about it. Like I said, I'm happy to look at your Upwork related stuff. For those of you on Twitch, I post my email address in the chat. You can DM me on Discord if you want to talk about Upwork or you want me to take a look at your profile or I've just lost the word, proposals. So I think that's all that we have. Thank you so much. Mike, any last notes to wrap us up? Are we good?
Good.
I guess if there's absolutely any food, I don't even know if that's true.
Nope.
Nope. All right. Good. You ate it all. Congratulations. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Charlie. We'll see you later. And have a good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.